The most dangerous person in your life isn't the one who hates you. It's the one who knows you, the one who's seen what the world was never supposed to see. For years, Meghan Markle's story has been told like a fairy tale. A Hollywood actress turned duchess, rising from normal beginnings to royal perfection. But fairy tales only look good when you don't look too close. And now, someone who once stood right at the center of that story has spoken up. The one man who knew her before the fame, before the crown, before the walls of Buckingham Palace. Trevor Engelson, Meghan's ex-husband, has supposedly broken his silence. And what he shared has sent quiet shockwaves through every circle that ever tried to protect her past. Because according to people close to him, Trevor didn't just talk about lost love or royal betrayal. He talked about something the world never imagined. A daughter. A daughter that existed way before Meghan's royal children, way before the fame, way before any cameras found her face. A daughter who today is rumored to have now given birth to a child of her own. If what Trevor said is true, then Meghan Markle, now 44, isn't just a duchess or a mother, she's a grandmother. And the name at the center of this buried chapter isn't Prince Harry, it's Joe Giuliano, the man who came before the spotlight, whose silence hid a story too dangerous for the world to hear. For almost 30 years, that secret stayed locked behind sealed files, erased records, and family loyalty. But now, the silence is breaking. And what's coming out of it might just rewrite the entire story of who Meghan Markle really is. For decades, Joe Giuliano was a name that lived in shadows, whispered in online archives, buried beneath denials, never confirmed, never addressed. He was, as one Chicago local described, a ghost in Meghan's story. But word from inside the Giuliano family circle says that silence has ended. After years of living quietly, Joe has supposedly revealed photos. Photos that may expose a truth hidden since the 1990s. Not about fame, not about royalty, but about a daughter Meghan Markle has never spoken of. Those close to Joe say this isn't about revenge. It's about a secret that grew too heavy to carry. And the timing, now nearly 3 decades later, isn't coincidence, it's consequence. Sources claim Joe's revelation started small. He told a longtime friend from Chicago, someone who had always wondered why Joe never remarried, never appeared in photos, and never answered questions about the past. Then, quietly, he handed over something that changed everything. A set of old photographs. The photos were simple, 2 snapshots taken years apart. But what they showed left everyone speechless. In the first image, a young Joe stands outside a cafe in Chicago holding a small child. She's beautiful with soft brown eyes, dark hair, and a smile that feels weirdly familiar. Those who saw the photo said it felt like looking at Meghan's reflection. The same left-hand dimple, the same freckled nose bridge, the same posture. The second image told another story. It was a side profile, cleaner, sharper, and this time the resemblance pointed toward Joe. The straight nose, the calm eyes, the same quiet intensity. Together, the photos felt less like coincidence and more like evidence, the kind of visual proof that words can't argue with. Insiders say the pictures were passed privately to a family friend before being leaked online. And once they appeared, even people who once laughed off the idea of a hidden daughter started to look twice. Because for the first time, the whispers had a face. And faces, unlike stories, don't lie. According to those who remember the Giuliano family from the 1990s, the resemblance didn't come out of nowhere. They recall a little girl who attended church with Joe's parents' big brown eyes, quiet smile, always holding her grandmother's hand. Back then, people thought she was a niece, maybe a cousin, but there was something strange. Joe never mentioned her. No one knew her name, where she came from, or why she was always there, but never spoken about. Then one day, the Giuliano family disappeared. No forwarding address, no phone calls, no records. They packed their lives into silence. And for almost 3 decades, that silence held until now. Sources from within Chicago say the young woman in those leaked photos has been seen before. At small gatherings, moving quietly under a different last name. And if those whispers are true, she's now a mother herself. Which would make Meghan Markle a grandmother at 44. It's a revelation that reshapes everything. Not just who Meghan is now, but who she might have been before the world met her. Because if this woman truly is Meghan's daughter, then this isn't just a royal scandal. It's the resurfacing of a story buried in family loyalty, erased records, and a silence that has finally started to crack. To understand where this story truly begins, we have to go back nearly 3 decades to a time before the palaces, before Hollywood lights, before the world even knew the name Meghan Markle. According to multiple sources close to the Giuliano family, Meghan and Joe Giuliano were married in a tiny Las Vegas chapel sometime in the mid-1990s. No photographers, no bridesmaids, just 2 young people chasing a moment that felt bigger than the world around them. One witness described it as quick and quiet, like they were in love, but in a hurry. They exchanged vows, signed the paper, and within hours, the chapel lights went out and the couple slipped away. No fanfare, no announcements, no family photos. But what came next was even stranger. Only a few weeks after that wedding, an annulment, not a divorce, was filed. In legal terms, a divorce ends a marriage. An annulment erases it as though it never happened. And in Nevada, that process can be lightning fast when both parties agree. Insiders say the case was sealed almost immediately, disappearing into courthouse archives with no trace online. No record number, no witness list, no certificate. It was as if the marriage and everything that came with it had been buried alive. One former friend of the Giulianos said softly, "That wasn't a breakup, it was a burial." And if that's true, the question becomes, what were they burying? In every normal story, marriage leaves fingerprints, photos, signatures, receipts, family memories. But when investigators tried to retrace Meghan and Joe's supposed union, they found nothing. Not a single digital record survived the transition into the early internet era. Not a single court index lists their names together. It's as though someone scrubbed it clean, on purpose. Sources familiar with Nevada court procedures claim that sealing an annulment that quickly required influence. The kind of influence that could only come from someone with strong connections or serious resources. Why? Some suggest the goal was to protect Meghan's image before she entered college and acting circles. Others claim it was to erase rumors of a pregnancy that didn't fit the timeline of a rising public career. Whatever the reason, the result was total disappearance. No paper trail, no photos, just whispers in a void where history should have been. Years later, when journalists began piecing together Meghan's timeline, the dates around her schooling raised new questions. Her supposed high school and university records didn't line up. Graduation years shifted. Age brackets didn't match. Even photos from her Northwestern theater group showed her surrounded by students, who today are nearly a decade older than her supposed age. It's a small detail, but in stories like this, small details often tell the loudest truths. If the rumored marriage and pregnancy did exist, changing her age by even a few years would make the story vanish completely. Make her younger, and that child born in the mid-90s suddenly falls out of the timeline. Erase a number, and you erase a life. After the sealed annulment, Meghan's life seemed to reset as if someone had pressed delete and started again. She left Chicago behind, returned to California, and began carefully building a new version of herself. Gone was the young woman tied to Joe Giuliano. In her place emerged an ambitious college student with a new story. New dates, new tales, and a future polished enough to shine on screen. Those who met her in those early acting days described her as driven, graceful, and almost rehearsed, as though she already knew how to tell her story perfectly. But to the Giulianos, who had once welcomed her into their family dinners, something felt off. They remembered her as warm, charming, but restless, always talking about Los Angeles, auditions, and destiny. Family was tradition to us, one friend said. To her, it was a chapter she was ready to close. This chapter of her life marks the birth of the Meghan Markle the world would later know an image, spotless and magnetic. But behind that glow, insiders insist there were loose threads, timelines adjusted, people left behind, and one secret that could never quite stay buried. Because while Meghan's career climbed, Chicago fell silent. The Giuliano family withdrew completely, locking their story behind closed doors. And somewhere in that silence, if the whispers are true, a child was growing up, unaware of the storm her existence might one day unleash. To understand the silence that surrounded Joe Giuliano's world, you have to understand his family. They were traditional Italian Americans from Chicago, loyal, private, and deeply protective of family honor. Every Sunday was dinner together. Every Friday began with grace. They believed in roots, not headlines. When Meghan entered their lives, she was polite and confident, but different. She talked about California, television, and chasing something bigger. At first they thought it was youthful dreaming. Then they realized it wasn't a dream. It was a mission. Meghan didn't want to stay. She wanted to become. So when the pregnancy whispers began, it broke the rhythm of everything they believed in. Joe wanted a home. Meghan wanted a future and, not the same kind. Faced with shame, confusion, and a growing secret, the Giulianos made a painful choice. They would raise the child themselves. No paperwork, no announcements, just silence. It wasn't an act of betrayal. It was an act of protection. For them, silence meant safety for their family, and perhaps for Meghan too. And from that day forward, the Giulianos vanished. They closed their curtains, cut off their contacts, and lived in quiet anonymity. Only a handful of people ever saw them again. Always the same couple, always with a little girl by their side. The little girl everyone remembers had big brown eyes and a calm, curious face. She would sit quietly beside her grandmother during church. Never restless, never noisy. She smiled like Meghan, but carried herself like Joe. Steady, grounded, gentle. To the neighbors, she was a sibling's child. To the family, she was a promise wrapped in silence. She went to school under another last name, never knowing the full story. Birth certificates and documents were handled privately. Her connection to Meghan Markle was erased before she could even write her own name. Years passed. She grew up, graduated, found work, and built a small life far from attention. And somewhere along the way, she became a mother herself. The small child seen beside her in the leaked photographs. The cycle had quietly continued. A daughter once hidden, now raising one of her own. When those photos surfaced, people who'd once lived near the Giulianos recognized her instantly. She looks just like the little girl from church, one old neighbor said. The freckles, the smile, the ice, the bloodline never hid as well as the records did. If those sources are right, that young woman never knew who her real mother was until the story broke wide open. And in one cruel twist of fate, she discovered the truth not through a family conversation, but through headlines. Every story leaves a trace, and sometimes those traces find their way home. When the photograph surfaced, Meghan Markle's carefully edited life suddenly had a shadow. Every biography, every royal appearance, every polished moment now carried a question that refused to fade. If the whispers are true, then the Duchess the world knows, mother actress, royal once left behind a life that never stopped waiting for her. And the girl in the photographs isn't just a mirror of Meghan's past. She's living proof that truth has a heartbeat. People close to the Giulianos insist this moment was never about destroying Meghan. It was about acknowledgement. As one quiet voice from that circle put it, we didn't hide her to protect Meghan. We hid her to protect the child. And now that child is grown. Those words linger like an echo, soft but impossible to silence. Because the truth always finds a way to breathe, even after decades underground. So now the world is left with faces that look too familiar, dates that don't line up, and a silence finally broken. Whether Meghan ever speaks on it or not, the past she buried has already found its way back. And as this chapter closes, one thing feels certain. The story isn't finished. It's only just waking up.